Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest for our chapter 4 of Finding Honor. Before I do that, here is a quote that I picked just for this episode. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. Friedrich Nietzsche. My dear friend, Christine Beckwith, the one, the only founder of 2020 Vision for Success Coaching, mentor to many, author of multiple books that I challenge you to pick up, from Breaking the Cycle to Clear Boundaries. Now we're talking about Wise Eyes. Now we're talking about Finding Honor, the Journey to the Truth, chapter 4 today. I want to read this excerpt in page 25. The gap between learning and knowing can be long. I ask you, when you think of your life, are you learning and seeking answers about your own happiness and life journey? Are you troubled by the path you find yourself on? Are you wishing your life to be different? Christine, those questions, why are those pertinent to the audience?
Yeah, I think in this chapter, knock, knock, who is there? It begs to, it might make you think, because I open it up talking about my own personal self-awareness journey, counseling, and admitting that I, needed to find somebody to help me level up my self-awareness. Education is an agreement. When we decide to submit ourselves to a chair and a desk as a child, we're doing so because the only authority we know, our parents typically, or whatever our guardians are telling us this is our job, essentially. They don't put it that way, but what are we really thinking about? At 3 and 4, we're doing what we're told. And we go and we're in preschool and we're sitting now. And so, of course, they make education fun. So it seems like you're doing something like a game almost, like there's somebody at 3 or 4, 5 years old. But that relationship with education as we age, we figure out, well, this stuff is kind of boring. This stuff is kind of hard, as we become teenagers. And now we've been going to school for 10 or 12 years. It can kind of feel like it's pulling you away from the fun stuff. I'm not home gaming. I'm not free. I'm strapped to going to school. And we even know that people rebel against school as teenagers because it feels authoritative. And that walk through education, the natural walk, leaves us as adults. And I don't think everybody's running into college hungry for more education so much as it's a rite of passage towards a great career. And wisdom tells you that these degrees are going to help you have better financial health in your adult years. I don't even know if at 18 you're smart enough to realize that, so much as your parents are saying, pick a college, you're going. And so as an adult, even as a child, I was different. I loved school. And I've written about my quest for college being out of reach and having a financial awareness at 14 or 15 that I could not. My parents proclaimed, we cannot send you to college. And at 14 or 15, when you're trying so bad and you're embarrassed about freaking everything, like everything, you're just embarrassed. You do not, embarrassment is the most profound, disdainful feeling you have at that age. I was so ashamed to go to school and not check off the box of collegiate classes when I was selecting my high school classes. And so the story goes that I forged my mom's name. And so, to finish this thought and answer your question, education for me personally came difficult. I don't think I'm special. I just think that we all, all the people in the world have special sets of circumstances that are unique to you. For me, I had to fight for my education. That was the beginning of me fighting for me to get the basic education preparation so I could even be accepted into college. Think about that. At 14 years old, I was worried that my parents did not want me to go to college prep classes. They wanted me to go to business prep classes, which meant typing and things like that, because they said, you know, there's secretary jobs you can get without a degree. They were worried about my dreams being shattered. They were very logical, realistic people that wanted to keep me, who was dream girl, like always dreaming and scheming at that age, on the ground. They weren't trying to be mean, but they were trying to be logical and realistic. And I appreciate their honest approach towards setting an expectation with me. Because if I had gone into college prep thinking my parents could write checks for college, I, you know, would have had that big downfall my senior year. Instead, it became a monumental, pivotal place in my life that I've drawn great self-inspiration from for the rest of my life, because I watched the principal wrestle my mother when my mother confronted him that I was in the wrong, that I had forged the college prep application and I needed to be moved to business classes. He argued why, and
Wow.
she explained their fiscal situation. And he said, if you do this, you're guaranteeing her not going to college. If you allow her to do this, we will help her try to find scholarships and grants. And so for the next 4 years, I worked with guidance counselors on prep for my senior year, where I would begin to write applications for scholarships and grants. I spent my weekends doing it. And I had a job at the local Century 21 as a secretary, ironically. And I would man the phones on Saturday and Sundays. And I spent all day while I sat there manning the phones, filling out applications. And I filled out applications upon applications upon applications. And I spent months doing it. And it all came down to one pivotal night. And that night was life-changing. It was our scholarship night for our senior class. Everyone in my class, which there was only like 88 people, knew that my future depended on that night. So I had
Wow.
like my Rudy moment in my life, because when I tell you the entire auditorium came to their freaking feet, I won 13 of 31 scholarships that night. And that put me to school. So education for me is everything. I'm so happy to be writing about it and putting my thoughts out into the universe. Finding you in my world at a time when I would say we get past the point where we're receiving education in any facet, and you're just living your life as an adult. This is the beauty of coaching. Real good coaching is that we create seats for adults that are past educational places in their life where they can still learn, they can expand their thinking, they can figure out things in our world in their trade. We're teaching trade level education for the mortgage and real estate industry, but we're also teaching emotional intelligence. We're teaching health and wellness. We're supplying grief counselors here at my company. I was working for a company when I met you, going through a lot personally in my mind and not having any outlet to speak to anyone. And so in finding you and discovering that you had knowledge about how I could work on my own psychology allowed me to begin a journey, which is why the book says the journey to truth, to figure out why I was misplaced in my life, why I was not where I should be, why I wasn't doing the work that was more purpose-filled, why I felt misplaced. I really think I came out in the 10 years that I spent with you working on myself and giving up a high-paying job to take the risk on doing a more purpose-filled work here as a consultant, but for less money at the time. And so if you're lucky, you have to get to your own door. I talk about 2 chapters in here, finding the door. But I start, and there's a reason I say, knock, knock, who's there? Who is standing on the other side of your door that you need to see open it and invite you into a new world you have waiting for you to discover about yourself? And can you walk through that door? And when you walk through the door, will you have the right person on the other side? For me, I knocked on your door. You open that door, I walk through, and the rest of the book begins to unfold what happens after you answer my door.
What advice do you have to someone not seeking counsel, advice,
Yeah. You know, we can
mentorship?
get in. I mean, I'm going to challenge people that feel like they know everything. Sometimes we try to sell coaching, and I have to tell you, my sales department is small. Because I am, and maybe this is bad business advice right now, so I'll say it tongue in cheek. I'm a monster salesperson. Like my numbers, you can Google. This is not me being conceited, but you can Google my name and you can dig. I encourage you to do so. And everywhere you go, you're going to find awards I was receiving in the 1980s, in the 90s. I was a competitor. And everywhere I sat, I was at the top of the food chain sales wise, in part because I love to compete. You know, I have a very athletic mind, and that sort of thing. You know, my point being that if you get into a place where you're just going through the motions of your life, I don't know that that's living. You know, I think we are meant to thrive as human beings. We're meant to reach. I have sat in chairs here and had moments, even in the last month, where I received an email or a text or a phone call. And it's somebody taking time to share gratitude because some sort of door opened in their life or window to something new and better and greater. Maybe they received more calm in a stressful life. Maybe they found their peace with something that's been killing them. Maybe they forgave people that they couldn't find in their heart to forgive before they got here. Maybe they had, you know, an epiphany. My sales department is small because I have such a great product in my mind, which is so purposeful and integral, that I feel like I'm kind of like the church. And I don't want to use that analogy because it's bad, but I'm going to say this. I feel like I'm the church that opens its doors every morning and says, come to me, world, come in. You can come in here and sit down and talk, and we're here. I don't feel like I need to go knock on doors for you to come here. We do marketing, obviously, and we're marketing experts, but our marketing is very organic in our approach that we'll show you what we do, we'll tell you what we do. But it really comes down to you. The hard work's going to come on you. We aren't feeding people Kool-Aid here. The sun doesn't always stay up. There's no rainbows or unicorns. Everything is going to have to happen at your seat, but we are going to facilitate the change and the evolution of that, which is what you did for me. So for people that aren't willing to do it, I would say expand your mind. Sometimes I get on the phone with somebody and they'll say, convince me to do consulting. And I say, no, no, that's not my job. My job isn't to convince you to do consulting. Why are you calling me? You know, what do you want to know in this call? I am the owner of a consulting firm. Why are you on this call today? I'm assuming it's because there's something in your life down deep that you believe you could be doing better or you'd like to examine. So how could I convince you that you're on the right path of that without me knowing more about what it is you want to do and then me telling you whether I can help you with that or not? I can sit here and tell you what I do. It's like telling you, it's like taking you on a tour of my grocery store. You came here to buy something. And so it's a real big waste of both our times for me to march you up and down these aisles. What are you looking for? And so when somebody says, you know, people will not call coaches and consultants because they're like, I know everything, you know, I just know everything there is. They have very finite thinking. They reach a certain level of their mountain, they're happy there. Some people are happy at base camp. They don't need to climb. You know, they're satisfied in their little village on the side of the mountain that they're living in, and they don't want to break a sweat. They got it good. They're eating well. They're sleeping well. And, you know, they're not trying to figure out the universe like you and I are. But I want to just say it's a magnificent journey. Finding honor, finding your honor finding your highest and best purpose in this world is a gift to the world. Like each of us has something incredible to give, but not all of us know what that is or are giving it.
How can someone get more from their counsel?
I mean, I'm going to say this. You are so inquisitive that, and I write about this in the book. Can I do a reading from this chapter? Because I knew we were going to do this. So Jay Doran is still magical for me. I feel as if I sat and rubbed a stone long enough for a magic genie to appear. By talking with Jay, I have morphed and had epiphanies surface and life-changing thoughts altered. Each time a better, more morally aligned version of me emerges. After being stuck in the quicksand earlier in my life, the combination of counseling and coaching I received proved to be the cocktail I needed to pull myself out finally. Today, I am standing on the sidelines, viewing the reflection in wonderment and amazement, learning and living the lessons I have finally been taught. I would add all of this occurred during a fragile mental time for me, whilst I sought to fill a cavernous void and save myself from my internal image of worthlessness caused by callously and mistakenly choosing selfish and hurtful paths to feed an attention addiction. I barely recognize that person anymore. In my self-reflection and memory, she is all but dead. At the same time, Jay was often startling and offensive to me. I would go so far as to say I wondered if he would drop a bomb in our conversation for sole purpose of being dramatic and to manipulate or cause an effect in the response. But as time wore on, I learned the cadence of his thinking, his mannerisms, his thought process, as best you can learn from an acknowledged genius and modern day philosopher. I knew every word Jay spoke, he meant. Every word Jay said came easily to him. Yet his words were tied to a string of forethought, and once explained would lead you to examine the depths of behavioral science. Then suddenly you realize somebody was smart enough to carry on a discussion leading to both truths and realizations. As time passed and Jay and my relationship naturally and organically grew into one of a student, me, and a coach, you, we were often conflicted in our discussions. I denied with angry vigor the labeling of my personality in his first assessment, using words I considered negative to describe my traits. In this way, he uncovered blind spots I never knew or saw in myself. Instantly, I knew I would change by merely acknowledging those deficits, and my ego would no longer allow me to be egotistical. The irony was incalculable. And so I say this because there are bad consultants and coaches out there that are skimming surfaces. And, I'm in a tough spot because I'm teaching in the mortgage and real estate industry, and I'm competing with a bunch of guys that have their calculators out and some bean counting, clipboards, and they're sending everybody off to make 50 calls today. And, they're teaching them basic mathematics skills without any emotional overlaying. They're not asking the human beings how they are. They're not bringing them to their purpose. Like, I understand it's easy for other people to look at what I do, what you do, and say, that's heebie-jeebie, that's, voodoo, that's, philosophical, cheerleading, inspiration, motivation. That's nonsense. I have vehemently denied that. I once, 20 years ago, was sitting in a boardroom with about 14 senior leaders, and my numbers were better than all the people at the table. I happen to only be the only woman. I don't think that matters. I'm going to say that just because it's a factual statement, but maybe there's a maternal side to me that didn't exist in my counterparts. I don't know. But as they laid the stats out of my area, which was about 125 people at the time, my people were surveying happier, healthier, more productive. I had less people quitting than any other division. So people were staying. So in my little bubble of the universe that I worked in my company, I created this world where people wanted to come to work, where people were helping one another. And those things existed in varied levels amongst my peers as well, but they just had much deeper people quitting. There was a lack of an emotional tie. And so while the same people that had worse numbers than me would say, she's a cheerleader, she's shaking her pom-pom, she's doing this, I was keenly aware that they were inept in their thinking, and that my emotional depth and my ability to connect with people on a relationship from a real place, not from a fake place, because people can do this. They can fake this a little bit. You can drive to like relational depth and fake it to a degree. But it's kind of the places you don't show up in that show whether it's real or not. I would lay in bed at night if you passed me in the hall and had a look on your face of despair, and I was rushing to a meeting late and I didn't have time to talk to you, and I would write the text or the email at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, get out of bed and say, Jay, I saw you today and I was running to a meeting and I was late, and I had an afterthought that you had this look of anguish on your face. Is everything okay? And those conversations are where those relationships were built. And let me tell you, that had ROI in business effect for me, because when hard markets came and I stood at the altar of my, team and said, don't quit. Stick with this. This is hard, but not impossible. We can do this. We're not going to eat 10 fish today. We're going to eat one. We may have to share the fish we catch with someone sitting next to us, but we're going to do this as a team. And here's the deal. We're going to eat. Okay. And so if you can, I think, understand, you ask great questions and you get to the meat, like just in this interview right here, we're way deep into thought and why this chapter 4, knock, knock, who's there matters. That question is 5-pronged. It's me knocking on your head, anyone listening right now, anyone reading this book. I'm knocking on your door saying, are you there? Are you self-aware? Are you looking inward? That's number 1. Number 2, are you knocking on doors around you to walk through the place you're standing for a greater journey towards self-awareness and a journey towards figuring your highest self out? We don't even ask these questions as 20 years old and 30-year-old. And I would even argue some 40-year-old aren't asking this. I've been asking this question my whole life and doing the work. It's hard for me to even recognize the person I was when I was 30 years old. At 30 years old, I was having adulterous affairs. I was drug addicted. I was still in this profession. I had some level of authority as a branch manager. I was willing to lie and live with it, even though I had guilt and I carried that. None of those things can exist for me at 53, because I have such extreme barriers towards things that come to knock at my integrity. There's no room for me to lie. I unfortunately will literally say things that are honest and take the immediate heat of I'll sit with you if what I'm about to tell you is going to hurt your feelings, to make sure that I'm not just plopping something hard down on the table, but I'm also making sure that we talk through. But that honesty is going to exist out of my mouth from square one today. And I'll deal with it immediately. I won't suppress that, tell a lie, try to recover, apologize, and deal with later damages. I don't have time for that. I'm not that person anymore. And by the way, I look in the mirror and I love what I see. Because I know I'm good. I have no guilt. People don't have to, if people think I'm talking about them when they leave a room, I have some people in my life that are sus of me. I won't name names, but I will tell you, I have some leaders that don't know me well. And I can see by their own behavior, they're skeptical of me. I've had things repeated to me by certain leaders where they're like, they think you're, damning them, because I may have looked at them and said, you need to improve here. You're doing this wrong. This is not becoming of you. Let me tell you what people think when they see this. you're going to have this happen if you don't change that. Now that person has all this information. I put like kind of my judgment on them a little bit, my wisdom. They're leaving feeling a certain way. And so in this way, I've become you for my clients. I'm willing for them to come back to me and have the deeper conversation where they learn that I do love them and care about them. If I love you and care about you, I'm going to tell you the tough things. If you never get to that level with me, well, then I probably don't love you. It's the reverse of what people think. And I've had people quit and leave me over the honest truths, which is, it's tough.
I wanted to ask what the fruit was, like the results, in closing, I guess, because if we're, why this path versus, or is it an either or? Because you mentioned earlier the people with the charts and the graphs. Can it be both? Can we have both? Can we integrate both? And if so, why and how, in your mind?
Yeah. So literally yesterday we did a virtual biannual summit, and it was called The One Thing. It's part 2's today. And I opened up the first keynote in the virtual summit, and I said 4 things in this mortgage world to this audience of people that are in our space. I said, you need to have mind, body, soul, awareness, and health. And then I went into what that looks like. You need to be able to assess and analyze your business. Like, you need to know your numbers. You need to know what it takes to get to the end result of where you're trying to get financially and in business. And I've always believed in that. My whole book, Wise Eyes, is dedicated to the blueprint for success, broken out in 14 chapters. And to this day, 20 years later, I wrote the blueprint for success. And that is, an all-encompassing 360-degree business assessment. I'm super analytical. My specific field of expertise is in financial forensics, which is deep banking numbers at the $1 billion level. But everybody needs to know their business. So that's an assessment. Third thing is economics. If you're going to work in the mortgage field, you have to understand the market, and you have to understand why we aren't in 07 and 08 and all of the attributes that make both markets different. There are similarities on the surface, but in the depths of what we actually have a much better market today. It's just loan officers don't understand how to sell this market. We had no equity and we had no debt in 07 or 08 and high deficiency. And so we were stuck. We literally were in a traffic jam. We couldn't sell our homes. We couldn't refinance them. That's not true today. We have a lot of equity and we're at the highest debt point. We have 2 ingredients to bake a cake, and we're sitting here complaining because we've become spoiled over low interest rates. This market is sellable. It's just loan officers have to lead with the interest rate, and they have to explain why taking a higher interest rate does make financial sense, and they have to actually pull the real numbers. So that was number 3. And then finally, number 4, is a person's ability to take action. There is so much inaction happening in this year's business because we're deer in the headlights of a change. And I can attribute all the success I've had and all the success I've seen with people to that. So to answer you, that's like 80% business tactical matter and only 20% kind of EQ in what I just gave. I'm very much a tactical leader in business. And so I do think both can exist, but I do think health cannot exist without the other. So this is what I feel, if you can't put your oxygen mask on, if you are having health issues, if you're having mental health issues, I am a person that admits in Finding Honor that I've battled depression throughout my life. And what you won't see is that I laid down and didn't work during those times. I coped, and I share my coping techniques. And I often say, like, when I was writing Finding Honor, my sister was dying and I was going through some level of depression, and she died right after the book was finished. I was able to add a final chapter to the book. I'm still battling depression to some degree, but I'm getting up every single day and I'm coming to work. And if I didn't make my health and wellness, my counseling and coaching, my self-awareness, my self-reflection, the paramount thing my business, I don't believe, would be as thriving as it is. All those things have to come first. And then, yes, I'm a mean, tactical competitor in this field. I'm going to run a mean business using every bit of the tactics I know. I hope that makes sense. And I hope today's episode makes people really think about whether they're knocking on doors and opening doors to their own truth in their life.